Cool. So, I'm pretty sure most of us have all heard of the Nativity over the many years that we've all lived. I don't know why I started like that was weird. Let's just read it out there. So I'm pretty sure most of us have heard of the Nativity before, but this story that's been told over and over many times in multiple films every year isn't just a simple story. It's history, and by studying history in school and in life, we learn a lot of things. So the people involved in the story seem super special because they've been involved in this story, but at the end of the day, they were just normal people. So let's start with the shepherds. For me, I feel like if the Nativity was a movie, which apparently it is many times, then in the credits the shepherds would be put down as Shepherds 1, Shepherd 2, Shepherd 3. And it's because they're not really mentioned, you know, they're part of the story, but they don't have a lot to say, not in the Bible anyway. But even though they seem to have a less significant role in the Bible, they have a really important part to play. Firstly, as soon as the host of angels actually appears to them, they literally leg it from their livelihood, from their sheep, from their jobs, to go find this baby boy that they've only just heard about. We see in them just this massive amount of excitement and awe about this new baby king that's been born. And this excitement continues because after they've seen him, it says in Luke 2:17 that they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed. They just saw baby Jesus and they couldn't help themselves but tell everyone around them. And that is the same excitement that we get when we first see Jesus. Some of you will know this feeling of excitement. You know, some of you went to the gathering, who've been to other festivals, who even have a close relationship with Jesus anyway. You'll know that excitement and that awe that you can have when you're around him, when you know him. And some of you don't, and that's okay. But this excitement and this feeling of awe, it's not out of your reach. All you have to do is just ask Jesus, just ask him for his presence. All you've got to do is talk to him. And once you see him and you see how cool he is, then there won't be any holding back. You'll be just like the shepherds, wanting to go out and tell people. And just to repeat, the shepherds were just shepherds. And the reason they played a part in the story is because when they saw Jesus, they just got super excited. And out of that excitement of seeing Jesus, more and more people got to experience that too. And that's the part that we can play right now. So the next big role that we see in the Nativity is the wise men, the magi, or the three kings, or whatever you want to call them. So for me to get my head around the wise men and their part that they played in the Nativity story, I have to think of the most inspiring people that I can think of. I think of people like Jackie Pullinger, Martin Luther King, C.S. Lewis, Obama's pretty up there too. And if you guys don't know any of them, you should totally Google them, like, solid. And the reason they inspire me is because for the most part I trust their judgment. But coming back to the wise men, these three guys, or we think three guys, were deemed the most wise, the most intelligent, not only by someone like me and the way I view C.S. Lewis, but they were viewed the most intelligent by the whole country. Like, that is a big deal. And these top dogs had the type of status that got them easy access to go see King Herod. Like, he knew them by name and he was like the king. These guys who had easy access to the king, who were deemed the most intelligent in their country, traveled miles and miles to bow down and worship a baby. So Jesus was king and he is God, but he chose to come down as a baby. And these wise men recognized that. They recognized his authority, even though he was in the most vulnerable human form. They recognized the fact that he was Lord over all and he was worth worshipping. These wise men lived up to their title. To be wise is to be humble, and to be humble is to understand who God is and to understand who God says you are. And they bowed down to a baby, yes, but that baby was Jesus, a baby worth worshipping. And believe it or not, we actually have to make that decision too. We have to let go of the pride that tells us we can do it all on our own without any help. The pride that tells us that we are already wise enough to figure out what to do with our life and to do with our situations. Sometimes we have to lay it all down at God's feet and we have to admit that we can't do it by ourselves. And that is the example that these wise men set. And that is the example that we should follow. So moving on to our next character of the Nativity, Joseph. What a dude. I feel like Joseph is severely underestimated. Like, he is hardly mentioned in any of the Nativity stories. But I believe that the journey that he went on in this story was one of the hardest, actually. Nowadays, we hear all about the word commitment and the lack of in social media and movies. You see people go out, they get what they want from a partner or a friendship, and then they're like, now I've got that now, I can move on. Joseph literally didn't get anything that he would have wanted. He had a fiancée who got pregnant before they were married. I mean, if this was the 21st century right now, with a different dude who didn't know commitment like Joseph did, they'd be on Jeremy Kyle show or something. Like, I'm just saying. But Joseph was But Joseph wasn't any dude, you know, he was handpicked by God to be in this situation with Mary. Just a few examples of Joseph's commitment is the fact that he had to walk a very long flipping way to Bethlehem while Mary was just chilling on the back of a donkey. That's just one. And the reason he took her to Bethlehem was so that she could find a safe place to deliver a baby that wasn't actually technically his. He then had to raise this child that wasn't technically his with as much love as he would raise his own children. And this reminds me of the importance of loyalty and commitment in this story and in Joseph's life. But loyalty isn't just something that we have to push through and work on by ourselves. We don't have to. And Joseph could have given up at any point if he decided to. Oh, that wasn't even on purpose. I wish it was. Pooh's not that funny, Beth. Pooh is not that funny. Back on track, back on track. Joseph could have given up at any point if he decided to. And he almost did, but God was by his side. At one point in Matthew 1:18-21 it says, Joseph had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are able to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. To me, this just says that God is by us all the time. He is right by our side. When we're going through the tough times, when we're going through the good times, when we're struggling with loyalty, commitment, He is always there. And when we cry out to Him, He does answer. And so just like He answered Joseph and gave him guidance, He can do that for us. So if you're ever going through a point where you're wanting to give up either on friendships, even on life, you know, God is always there. He listens to our cries, He listens to our whispers. So just like Joseph, He has a plan for us and He will help us go through that plan. So Mary, let's talk about Mary. So Mary is a very well-known person, and I feel like it makes it harder to feel like you can relate to someone the more well-known they are. But believe it or not, she was ordinary. She was probably a similar age to most of you. The people say that she was around 14 to 16 years. Which is a bit mad. She had plans for her life, you know? She was gonna get married to Joseph and then she was gonna move somewhere else maybe. I don't know what they did back then. Also, disclaimer, she was kind of super young when she was gonna get married, but the culture was different then, so don't feel any pressure to get married at 14/16 because I think it's illegal. So I think we can all confirm that Mary was pretty ordinary, apart from the fact that she was going to marry super young, but it was kind of normal back then. So the thing that made her stand out was the fact that she said yes to God. Nowadays in our culture, the word obedient has a lot of backlash, but this obedience, the obedience to God, is actually really something beautiful. I've heard it said before that obedience is actually one of God's love languages. Like, that's cool. I find that cool. So Mary's obedience and her willingness to give up all her plans for God's plan, that yes that she said to Him was one of the most powerful yeses in history because it played a part in bringing along Jesus. Mary was around your age. She was younger than me. We are never too young to say yes to God and His plan for our lives. All we have to do is just say yes. So all these guys that I've spoken about, they had a part to play for a bigger purpose, and that purpose was Jesus. So Christmas is all about Jesus. It's literally called Christmas. And Jesus is God. So we're laying down the facts here. And even though He was God, He decided to come down to earth and be born a baby. Jesus' birth wasn't exactly a spur of the moment thing. God wasn't just like, you know what, I'm gonna send my son and let's see what happens. You know, his birth was being predicted throughout the Old Testament. For instance, in Isaiah 7:14, it says, "But the Lord will still give you proof. A virgin is pregnant, she will have a son and will name him Emmanuel." And then again in Numbers 24:17, it says, "What I saw in my vision hasn't yet happened, but someday a king of Israel will appear like a star." This is just a few of many scriptures that are predicting Jesus' coming to earth. This is a big deal. So through these prophecies, we see that Jesus is going to be coming. So the Old Testament leads up to the birth of Jesus and his life. In fact, some of the most relevant people in the Old Testament, such as Abraham and David, were relatives of Jesus. And there was a reason why there was so much build-up, why there was so much hype about his coming. The life of Jesus and what happened in it, the fact that he died for us, that has literally changed the course of history ever since. Because of Jesus' life, as Christians, we can ask for forgiveness. We are fully clean straight away because Jesus died on the cross. I think the most significant thing for me about the life of Jesus is the fact that he decided to come to earth. He left his glory, he came as a baby, but he decided to come as fully human. And so because of that, he was then fully dependent on the Father in heaven. In John 1:1-5, it says this, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." So Jesus has been around all along. It wasn't the fact that God decided to choose a random baby and then name him Jesus, and then he was going to grow up, die, and then somehow everything would be fixed. Jesus was God. He was there at the beginning, yet he came down and he died for us. So the light that the verse talks about, the light that darkness has not overcome, that is Jesus. And then in John 1:14, it says this, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory and the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." He grew up and he died for us. And then he rose again, defeating darkness. By doing this, he removed the ties of sin wrapped around humanity. And because of this, we can now live freely. All because of this little baby. So that little baby that we neglect every Christmas, that we kind of push to the sides of our mind, like we know what the real meaning of Christmas is, but presents are cooler.
Avocado! Thanks!
That baby was God, and that God came down to earth to die for us, to die for you. So this Christmas holiday, take some time to actually think about the real big deal about Christmas. Yes, gifts can be good, family and friends are definitely good, but nothing quite compares to the goodness of the gift that was Jesus. The goodness that we find in the life, the death, and the resurrection of that baby, of Jesus, the Son of God. He was the most powerful gift in history, and he came for you.